Good morning, Columbia CSL, and all of those joining us as we enter into this beautiful light-filled season. You know, this month we have a new theme, messaged in many diverse ways throughout our affiliated centers for spiritual living. It is called The Journey of Becoming. How appropriate we are entering this season, which includes the celebration of winter solstice, the shortest day of light, and the longest night of darkness. My talk, The Dark Night of the Soul, I know does not create warm, fuzzy feelings, nor perhaps feelings of hope or inspiration. Not yet, at least. But today we will explore this idea in a manner that I'm intending will leave you both more curious and open to the value of welcoming it in. Both Hanukkah and Christmas are a festival of light, celebrations of God's power to transcend the darkness of the world. It is when we face the darkness squarely in the eye in ourselves and in the world that we begin to last see the light. And that's the alchemy of personal transformation. In the midst of the deepest, darkest night, that is often when the faint shadow of our wings begin to appear. And only when we have faced the limits of what we can do, does the infinite universal potential begin to dawn on us and in us. It is the depth of the darkness now confronting our world that will reveal to us the magic of who we truly are. We are spirit, and thus we are more than the world. When we remember that, the world itself will bow to our remembrance. Hanukkah is a reminder that at a time of great peril, God overcame the laws of time and space as we know them, candles burning for 8 days and nights and delivering the Jewish people to safety. Christmas is a similar reminder of transcendence. God descending into the soul of humanity, supporting them to lift themselves up from their internal darkness. So the two are remarkably similar revelations, that the darkness of the world is superseded by the light of God. And that's the miracle of both. This journey of becoming, or self-actualizing, is such a full spectrum of adventure of the sacred complements. I use that term. Holmes uses that term, Dr. Ernest Holmes, rather than using the idea of opposites, sacred complements of one another, two sides of the same coin, where we most often see light and dark, happy and sad as things that are opposing each other. So these sacred complements allow us to be curious, to clarify our questions, our values, our needs, and set new intentions and deepen our gratitude as we grow. For we know everything and every feeling is impermanent. I think of our becoming as the continual and eternal discovery and revelation of our expanding expression of our divine humanity. Religious holidays do not just apply to what happened thousands of years ago, to people who lived in ages past. You know, rather they point to eternal truths that are as true for us today as they were then. They apply not only to the things that change, but to the things that do not change. They apply not only to the conditions of the world, but the condition of our humanity's soul. And most importantly, they're not just fairy tales. For within them are metaphors about the way things really work. There are objective, discernible laws that prevail within the internal world, just as there are objective, discernible laws of external phenomena. Understanding gravity isn't a matter of opinion, and neither is understanding spiritual law. If there is a God, and if the power of God carries the miraculous power to change things in the mortal world, then whether or not we believe these truths, they will still remain. Now think about that for a moment. Think about all the inequities moving within this world today. And then consider again what it means that God has the power to transcend the darkness of the world. For those things are the darkness of the world. As sung in the song, O Holy Night, long lay the world in sin and error pining, applies as much to humanity's condition today as it did 2,000 years ago. So the promise of the science of mind teachings, its philosophical proposition, stands firmly on these objective, discernible laws that prevail within our internal world, stating with scientific certainty and centuries of humanity's demonstration that we can choose to access and apply ourselves to the deepening of understanding and the practice to reveal for ourselves our own wholeness and unity. Our own wholeness and unity. And be that as the sacred truth of the nature of all being, of our being, right here and now. We study something called metaphysics, meaning beyond the physical world, into the energetic substance of all creation, through the process of universal love leading the way and its law making it happen. Our choice to walk the spiritual path, to live a spiritual life, is the journey of becoming one with our spiritual truth, our spiritual nature. Balancing our mind, the personal law of our being, with the compassionate and unifying wisdom of our heart. This is the harmony within aspired to, aligning us with a harmonious universe operating in divine order. I felt it important to consider who we are and are becoming on this journey by holding our experiences of darkness with feelings other than fearful ones. So today's topic, the dark night of the soul, comes from the title of a work by 16th century mystic, St. John of the Cross, then a monk in St. Teresa's Carmelite order. It was written at a time when he was beaten and thrown into a dark closet where he stayed for 9 months for wanting to reform their religious teachings. In these pages, St. John describes how and why the soul must risk entering the darkness, becoming empty and abandoned to be ready for union, real union with God. Imagine what it would be like to just breathe when in the darkness. I want to share the following poem with you by Becky Hemsley. She's a spoken word poet. She shares her take on what keeps us from believing we are worthy of our mystical union with the beloved, or the marriage of our soul with Christ consciousness. It's entitled, aptly, Breathe. She sat at the back, and they said she was shy. She led from the front, and they hated her pride. They asked her to advise, and then they questioned her guidance. They branded her loud, then were shocked by her silence. When she shared no ambition, they said it was sad. So she told them her dreams, and they said she was mad. They told her they'd listen, then they covered their ears and gave her a hug while they laughed at her fears. And she listened to all of it, thinking she should be the girl they told her to be, best as she could. But one day, she asked what was best for herself, instead of trying to please everyone else. So she walked to the forest and stood with the trees. She heard the wind whisper and dance with the leaves. She spoke to the willow, the elm, and the pine, and she told them what she'd been told time after time. She told them she felt she was never enough. She was either too little or far, far too much, too loud or too quiet, too fierce or too weak. too wise or too foolish, too bold or too meek. Then she found a small clearing surrounded by firs, and she stopped. And she heard what the trees said to her. And she sat there for hours, not wanting to leave, for the forest said nothing. It just let her breathe. This is a very familiar journey of becoming, isn't it? That we humans share, identifying too much with what comes to us from the outside. Even though ours is to walk with one foot on planet Earth, relating to and identifying with the impermanent world of condition, and with the other foot firmly planted in the soul's longing for its true home in the spiritual nature of things. So many things stand in the way of our union with God. Breathe just for a moment. It is challenging to affirm by the way we live our right place at the table when our focus is turned outside looking for our truth. Just breathe. I'm reminded that it was said of Jesus, to his own he came, yet his own did not accept him. The majority of people did not and could not recognize the true being of Christ and the indwelling spirit to which his teachings constantly attempted to draw their attentions. Even when he was right in front of them, the very lighthouse of palpitating spiritual energy, their untrained eyes could not perceive his real nature. So many of us are occupied with our religious observances, our traditional ideas, authority, and the approval of others that we cannot see the eternal presence within ourselves, right where we are. We get bewitched and guided by the trappings of time and space and of form, and are fearful of dying to ourselves in the name of love. In the writing of this story, the darkness is also represented as Jesus the light chose Judas the dark. And even he knew Judas would be the one to betray him. So why did Jesus knowingly bring the dark night upon himself? Well, perhaps because he knew that he must experience and express the fullness of life in order to transcend it into the eternal union with the Father, the lover with the beloved. Our journey of becoming is about expanding our awareness of wholeness and oneness with the beloved, isn't it? In our class the other night, Julia Mattis said, and I noted, awareness stops the spinning. I love that statement. When we are aware that everything is impermanent in this material world, this third dimension, we can begin to live in the mystical marriage of the physical plane and the spiritual, knowing that energy and form are one thing, as are I and the we. There are many other mystical writings besides the experience of St. John, as we know. A couple of my favorites, Pema Chodron, the Buddhist nun, and of course our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes of the Science of Mind, which speak to the acceptance of impermanence. Here is an invitation for you to listen and breathe and feel your way through Jeff Foster's words, which I found moved me from the experience of darkness to light, from fear to faith. Choose as you will as you listen and breathe. You will lose everything. Your money, your power, your fame, your success, perhaps even your memory. Your looks will go. Loved ones will die. Your own body will eventually fall apart. Everything that seems permanent is absolutely impermanent and will be smashed. Experience will gradually or not so gradually strip away everything that it can strip away. Waking up means facing this reality with open eyes and no longer turning away. Right now, we stand on sacred and holy ground. For that which will be lost, has not yet been lost. And realizing this is the key to unspeakable joy. Whoever or whatever is in your life right now has not yet been taken away from you. This may sound obvious, but really knowing it is the key to everything, the why and how and wherefore of existence. Impermanence has already rendered everything and everyone around you so deeply holy and significant and worthy of your heartbreaking gratitude. Loss has already transfigured your life into an altar. Breathe. Darkness comes about through our view or perception about what we believe is true. And we therefore can experience which seems unmanageable and scary. Darkness, something we want to escape from by any means. But if we sit in the darkness with a beginner's mind and bring the energy of our values and the knowledge of impermanence rather than our views into the space, the fear of the unknown shifts and lessens. We often feel caught between fear and our faith. How do we turn our fear in the darkness into faith in order to sit with and ask the darkness questions and gain the clarity we need to move further into the source within us to follow its divine guidance? You know, I know when we get triggered and everything unlike seems to fill our experience, I remember that it is the natural universal creative process happening. Think of it as the melting of both the tip of the iceberg and the greater unseen part of the iceberg. Things are getting shaken up when we consciously focus on a new intention that is light-filled in all situations, so that we may see through the film of false and limited belief to affirm a greater truth. When we change the words, "it is done unto us as we believe," to "it is done through me as I believe," we feel a sense of empowerment that comes with this knowing, and we can proceed consciously creating, remembering that there is not a them out there that needs to do the work. There is only a me that needs to do my work. This will help us maintain our inner focus when we feel fearful. It is not a denial of another's behavior, but rather a healing moment to right our thinking around a personal wound or belief of limitation. Another idea of moving ourselves from fear to faith in the darkness would be to consider that we often don't know what we feel we deserve until we get it. So don't worry about that. It is important for us to feel that we deserve a new experience, a condition, in order to demonstrate it. You know, sometimes sitting with the darkness is the very place that we need to be to identify why we are masking the light of our truth within our union with the beloved. And when we come to that place, much of our true desire and our intention for our life is revealed. Joseph Campbell talks about the roles of the lover and the beloved. He talks about it as the two aspects of the soul, being male and female, and how they come to meet each other. He uses the word crucifixion in the sense that each must sacrifice yourself to the marriage or the wholeness of spirit. Now, most of us cringe at the word crucifixion and sacrificing, don't we? But that is when we feel we lose ourselves in the other person or another, and it is thought of from a place of the identity of our personality. But here Campbell is saying, lover, sacrifice, the ever-changing ideas of who you are so that you can melt into the arms of the beloved, so that you can reveal the wholeness of your true nature and be in love eternally. Now, when we are willing to take these steps into the most intimate relationship, we do so letting go of both our fears and our desires that are rooted in the outer world, and we begin to do what needs to be done, whether we like it or not. Both Socrates and Jesus, two teachers of virtue and love, were executed because of the unsettling, threatening power of their souls, which was revealed in their personal lives and in their words. They did not carry guns, yet they still were a threat, because there is nothing more powerful than the revelation of one's own soul. A soulful life is never without shadow, and some of the soul's power comes from its shadow qualities. And care of our soul requires our appreciation of all ways that the soul needs to express itself, as we remember that, excuse me, like the seasons of our soul too, it has its cycles. And if we want to live from our depths soulfully, then we will have to give up all pretense to innocence as the shadow grows darker. When we surrender the idea that innocence is a virtue, our soul may be fully expressed and our personal power increased. In the presence of deep power, life becomes robust and passionate and deeply, deeply connected. There is an Asian saying that advises when life throws a dagger at you, there are only two ways to catch it, either by the blade or by the handle. And cooperating with life in the present requires us to catch adversity or the shadow expression of our soul by the handle and use it as the tool for which it was intended. As many of you are aware, the co-creation of community service happened last night. An inclusive process that is intended to further release both the individual and the collective consciousness, collective subconsciousness, from limited beliefs based upon past experience about themselves, others, this community. Its purpose is also to set focus upon what is possible by means of the power of community agreement around a new vision for our next minister. There are 3 ongoing activities which cycle through the entire co-creation process that were pointed out, and I wanted to share those with you. The first is learning to go faster, or to go slower. Pardon me, I'm always going faster. To go slower, to go faster. The second was healing, applying wisdom from the learning process so that when we shine the light into our souls, all else falls away. And the third was revealing, combining the welcomed in wisdom and operating in wholeness so that we come together in alignment and something new with a higher vibration can be created. Learning, healing, and revealing. Learning, healing, and revealing. And we will lastly create a sacred covenant. And it will be revealed next week on the 12th. And it will reflect the level of what this community agrees are its values. You know, we each have been called to this community at this time to do our open expansion into the awareness of our wholeness as individuals and as a collective. Always remaining aware of our own tendencies to enact what we call spiritual bypass, which is avoiding that which is dark and may sting by using and applying spiritual positive vibes or a spiritual band-aid. The use of spiritual bypass is really great in the world right now, and it's understandable. You know what? These are heavy times of inner excavation for us. And all that we knew and loved and hated and tolerated and expected, it's all up for grabs. It's such a beautiful time of reset and recalibration that welcomes us to yield into it and create anew. It's our resistance that creates our suffering. No, it is not always all good and fine and positive vibes only. You know, we're each being called to rise up in authenticity and become the best humans we can be. So as this year 2021 is now drawing into a close, all of us psychologically are preparing ourselves for new beginnings. So our choice is whether to mindlessly or mindfully celebrate the holidays and not allow externalities to penetrate our heart. These holidays only become holy if we spiritually rise up and meet them. And then they are so much, much more than just days on the calendar. They carry the power to change our lives. Yes, St. John of the Cross was a pivotal pioneer in the area of soul transformation. And like him, we have innately within our soul the lover longing to be united with the beloved. So as you are exploring your own amazingly unique journey of becoming through the dance with darkness and light, perhaps affirm that everything I need to know for my highest healing and revealing is happening right now. Blessings to you during this light-filled season. And so it is.